Are you more in the scientific realm of it's just your brain? Or do you ever really go deeper than that?
Yeah, one of my go-to prompts for people is to check in with their highest, wisest self. Because oftentimes we are looking through the eyes of, for example, when we're triggered, we're looking through the eyes of who we were at the age that we were first triggered.
I'd like to welcome everybody today to the show. Today I've got Jaleena here from Marisa Rose Wellness. I said it right.
Yes.
And I said this before we started this, but I really am happy to have you here. I was excited to get you on board early on when I started doing this podcast. And there's a reason, like I said, there's a method to my madness here, but really interested in the things you've been doing. And I want to talk to you about those things. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So what a lot of people won't know is the reason I do know you is because I run a coaching business in music and guitar and vocals. And I taught you guitar, I don't know how many years ago, but we started that way, right? That's when I first met you. Yeah. And you weren't on your current path at that time, I don't believe, if I can remember.
Absolutely not.
Right. So that's why I'm interested to talk to you. The other thing is I think our paths, although different, may have some similarities, and that's what I want to get through. And we haven't even talked about this. So this is right off the cuff, right? Like we're not, we didn't plan this ahead of time. We don't know where this is going to go. But if you can do me a favor, the first thing I wanted to ask you is what you do and what is Marisa Rose Wellness?
All right. So I'm a social worker. And I started my wellness business. I'm also a holistic nutrition coach. So I wanted to start my wellness business because I thought that I could really amalgamate the two really nicely together. So right now I have my own private practice where I do counseling and nutrition support. And so sometimes I have people come to me and they want all of it. Like they want the counseling and the nutritional guidance all together. And sometimes people come to me and they just want more nutrition support. But I love the ability to be flexible and to be able to integrate both things together. So yeah, that's basically what I do. And I come from a more holistic lens, meaning I'm not so much like your traditional talk counseling where you would just go and kind of talk things out. I incorporate a variety of different modalities and techniques into my counseling sessions that make it, in my opinion, a more holistic approach.
That's awesome. So that's really interesting. So you're doing counseling from your social work background together with like nutritional advice based on your holistic background. Is the holistic nutritional background? Is that correct? Is that what I mean? Is that what you mentioned?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you get first? Were you into social work first, or were you into the nutrition side of things first?
Social work first. And then I just graduated from the holistic nutrition course, I think 2 years ago.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Pretty cool. So again, I feel like in all these podcasts, I talk a little bit about something that is similar to what I've done. One of my first guests, Derek, I had mentioned that he was from computer background. I had some computer background. I also have social work background. So I went to school and with a Human Services Foundation certification, and then went into an SSW program, was going to go get my master's in social work in a university, and then started actually working with youth outside of, while I was getting that, while I was working towards my diploma or my degree. And decided while I was working with them, I wanted to teach them music because I was also a musician. And so I actually started my music teaching career teaching guitar in correctional environments.
Oh, wow.
Group homes and things like that. So
I love that.
I have that social work background too, but then moved away from it as I got into my music career and my music teaching business. So didn't finish that, but I thought it was an amazing program because I was learning about human beings and people. So I have a little bit of that. I didn't go as far as counseling and all that stuff, although in all coaching, there is some kind of counseling that comes up sometimes, even in my music coaching. Yeah. So I can relate in that way to you. The way that you're doing the coaching, or sorry, not the coaching, the counseling with the idea of nutrition, I think that's really neat. So, and I want to talk to you about the nutrition thing in a second, but what I wanted to ask you was, if there was something in your life that you felt a drive to go in that direction, because I could probably talk about that for an hour with the social work side of things.
Yes.
But, you know, depending on how personal you want to get or whatnot, I don't know if there's anything you want to share, but what drove you to getting into the counseling kind of side of things?
Yeah, it's a good question. So for the social work background, definitely it was influenced by family. So my grandmother struggled with alcohol addiction, and I had some other family members that also struggled with addiction. And just growing up around that and witnessing, the family go through that, I always just had this, desire to understand what was happening and just kind of like why is she struggling, and why, like, how can we help her? And I didn't really see anyone in my family offer that. Like, I didn't see anyone offering her support, or I didn't see anyone trying to find her help, and I was confused by that. And so I was determined to essentially figure it out and be able to hopefully help others. Unfortunately, I obviously wasn't able to help my grandma because she was my grandmother and I was a teenager, but I was determined to help others in some way after, witnessing what she went through.
Right. So start with your grandmother and the influence you had from what she went through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where it all started for sure. Yeah, especially like with the counseling piece. And then the nutrition piece was something that came later on.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So again, I can relate in different ways in that. We won't get into that, but I can definitely relate. So good for you for going in that direction and trying to help people in their. So I'm sure that it's not all around substance abuse. I don't know if that's your main topic of counseling. Maybe it is, but maybe you do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, not anymore. So I originally went to Fleming College and took the addiction counseling program. So I first graduated with a diploma in addiction counseling, and then I worked in the addiction field for several years. And then I went to university and got my social work degree and kind of switched out of the addiction field for a bit. And I just kind of, I worked in child protection for a little bit.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah. And then I had my first daughter, and that's when the nutrition piece came into my life.
Okay. I was just going to ask you that. I was going to say, so, this will be something that'll come up probably in a lot of my podcasts, is that people may or may not know I'm plant-based. I've been eating plant-based since 20, I think it'll be around 2015, 2016 now. So we're going 8 years. I don't know how many years now, but, and then prior to that, I almost already was plant-based before that. So there was a big shift at one point that I went through. I'm really interested in talking about that because, it made some big differences in my life. Yeah. So one of the big things that I wanted to ask you is what it was that, because you mentioned having a child made you interested in holistic nutrition. Can you elaborate what you mean?
Yeah.
I'm curious about that.
Definitely. Yeah. So, well, I would say that probably around the same time that you went plant-based, I switched to eating vegetarian. So I still ate dairy, all that good stuff, eggs. And that was more of my husband's influence. He was primarily the one that does all the cooking.
Right.
I have to admit, I'm not the greatest cook. So I kind of just followed his lead at that time. And then when I had my first child, would be 2018. I was still eating vegetarian, and she developed a really strange rash, like really close to her eye. And I took her to lots of doctors and dermatologists, and I was trying really hard to figure out what it was that was going on, and nobody had any answers for me, and everyone was just kind of guessing, and they wanted me to just keep putting steroids on her eye, which I was really uncomfortable with. So I just started researching on my own, and I discovered, I don't know if we want to put the label. I don't really like using the label vegan, but
Okay.
essentially that's what I was researching, and found some research that suggested that removing dairy might help.
Right.
So I just thought I'd give it a shot. So when I switched to veganism, or plant-based, it was really for my daughter, and just trying to see if I could figure out how to heal this rash that was on her eye. And I think it took a few months. And it's pretty typical once you switch over your diet, it takes some time for your system to readjust. And so it was probably around like 4 or 5 months after eating, pretty strict vegan, that her rash cleared up, and it never came back. So I don't know if it was a coincidence or not. I can't say, but I do know that nobody else had any answers, and that seemed to have an impact.
Well, I'll go a bit into my story a little bit because it overlaps yours. So thanks for sharing that. So what happened with me was I had my second child, a daughter, and she discovered very young that we were eating meat and was not happy with that. And so because she wouldn't eat the meat, I started not eating the meat with her. And so I would eat everything else, but I wouldn't eat meat. So it started that way. That's kind of how things started. Then what happened was I grew up since a child with a condition called psoriasis. So a skin condition, affects millions of people. And I started having different breakouts, and I noticed that it was after I'd eat certain foods. So I started doing a lot of research. I found a guy online at the time that was called Psoriasis Buddy, I believe. I think he's no longer on YouTube. And some other people, and he had gone vegan. He had gone totally 100% vegan, almost like a fruitarian vegan. He went hardcore. Wow. And he was, for years, he was using all these steroids. And what happened was he went fruitarian, and he documented his life for like, I don't know how many months, 6 months, and it completely disappeared. And it was all over his body. I never had it like that. But when I saw this, I was like, okay, I'm already not eating meat. And so I decided right away to cut all sugar, like processed sugars. Natural sugars were okay, but I cut out all processed sugars, stopped eating meat, all dairy, everything. And I was just calling it plant-based, but I realized it was vegan. And I want to ask you that afterwards about the vegan name as well, because you do the same thing I do when it comes to using that term. So, but as I did that, I started having a flare-up, and I started reading that what happens is things get worse before they get better because it's internal, it's in the gut. So I kind of just pushed through that and completely cleared. I mean, I was 99% clear. There was a few little marks, but it was so clear. I was blown away. This was around 2017. The downside of it is I lost a lot of weight. I mean, a lot of weight, because I was eating pretty much completely whole food, plant-based, and without healthy fats. So I had just kind of gone in that direction, and people were saying, wow, Joe, it went from, wow, Joe, you're looking really good. You're looking really good to, you look kind of sick, man. Like, what's going on? You're getting a little skinny. And I was like, no, you're just jealous. Like I look great. And then, but then I noticed, looking back at pictures now, it had gotten a little far. But I was so excited about the skin clear up. So I can relate to your daughter's story with that. I've never left veganism since then. I once I made that change, something changes. It felt like something changed in me, and I don't know how to describe that. 90% of my close friends and family are not vegan. So I don't have a super strong, I think everyone gets to choose, to a point. Since being plant-based for so long, when I started, everyone's always like, why are you vegan? That's the big question I always get, right?
Yeah.
And I'll ask you that too, but I always said, first it was health.
Yeah.
Whether that's selfish or not, it went for health first. Then something shifts at some point. For me, it shifted for me around the idea that I was about the animal agriculture, the industry around it.
Yeah.
And just the compassion started happening and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if you've had the same thing, but it's a delicate subject too, because I don't want people to think that I'm saying if you eat animals, you're a terrible human being. And I ate lots of meat for most of my life. So this is what worked for my health. So what do you feel? Why are you vegan? When people ask you, like, what was the main thing? Was it, do you just go right to the daughter story, or do you say it's something else?
Yeah, at the time, it was definitely just for my daughter. And then it led into like just researching more and looking into it more. It did lead into caring about the animals. And I think I watched a few documentaries. What was the one? I think Cowspiracy.
Oh, yeah.
Watched a few of those. And then I kind of did get into a stage where I was very passionate about animal welfare. And I would always say for health first and foremost, like for my daughter's health. And I wish I could sit here and say like it was for my health, but
wow,
it was for my daughter, right? Like it was, So and then I wanted her to grow up knowing, having good habits, because I know what I grew up eating. And sometimes I don't even know how I didn't have like severe deficiencies. Maybe I did have severe deficiencies. I don't know. But I just wanted to be a good role model for her. So then the passionate piece came out, and I was very gung-ho about kind of spreading the word about, compassion to animals. And I still do feel that way. But I have to admit, I did get kind of suckered into a little bit of the vegan like propaganda and like the culture where it almost becomes a little hostile.
Right.
And I started realizing that instead of it being something that made me feel aligned and like at peace, I was finding myself like feeling kind of up against, like I felt like I was almost like up against the world, and it started to become not a really good feeling. And there was a lot of hostility, and I would just random hostility from random people, and it started to become something that I wasn't overly thrilled about anymore, because I don't really like confrontation. So I kind of backed off of that, piece about being so passionate. And it's not to say that I don't care about the animals, because I do, but that's definitely not the forefront of my attention anymore. And I've found that just letting a little bit of that go has brought more peace into my life. So I've had to kind of maybe find a bit more balance in that sense for the sake of having peace.
Yeah, I think that corresponds with what we were saying about the word vegan, right? I think it makes you not want to say vegan.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a bad thing to say. I think the vegan, saying you're vegan, I think we should be proud to be vegan, be proud to be plant-based vegan. I generally say whole food plant-based at this time, but the problem is when something is taken in a wrong direction, or it becomes hostile, or it makes people feel less than, then what can happen is it brings on a negativity. And I totally understand it. And I have people I follow that are really, really fighting the movement. And I appreciate them for doing that. I don't think I could do it.
Exactly.
Being honest, because it's a lot. I totally understand why you kind of had that feeling of not talking about it. You did mention something I wanted to ask you. You said something about deficiencies. Mm-hmm. So did you have deficiencies before you went plant-based, or now that you're plant-based? I'm curious about this because a lot of times what comes up when people you're vegan, oh my God, how do you have any muscle? Or they'll say, where's your protein? Or they'll say you're iron deficient, right? So I was wondering if in your own holistic nutrition approach, what kind of answers would you give to someone that would come to you and say, I'm a female, I want to go plant-based, but I feel like I'm going to be iron deficient?
Yeah. Well, first, to answer your first part of your question, unfortunately, I never did a blood test before I transitioned. So I don't know if I had any deficiencies before, but I did do a blood test after transitioning and everything was fine. And I was vegetarian through my first pregnancy and everything was fine. And I was vegan through my second pregnancy and everything was fine. Okay. And you probably know that when you're pregnant, you need quite a bit more of various different nutrients, like a significant amount more. And so I definitely had to pay attention, but I do think that it's fair to say that any pregnant woman, no matter what kind of diet they're eating or lifestyle they're living, should be mindful of their nutrient intake during pregnancy.
Right.
What would I say to someone who is wanting to switch to vegan, like a vegan diet or a plant-based diet?
Yeah. If they have concerns around the iron issues and things like that, is there something they should be doing? I know what I do. I'm curious what you do.
It's so case specific to each person, because a lot of the time I have to work with also what they're willing to eat and what they're not willing to eat. Yes. Which can be a barrier sometimes, especially when it comes to like beans and legumes and stuff. I have a lot of people that are like, I won't eat that. But there's one trick, which I'm sure you know, is to add some vitamin C to your so like if, say, for example, we know that spinach has a decent amount of iron in it. And if we add some vitamin C to it, like eat it with, maybe some peppers or sprinkles or squeeze some lemon on it, it increases the bioavailability of that iron in the spinach.
That's great. I like to say I do totally know that. I have heard this. I haven't really gotten deep into that. When I started eating vegan, I decided to start implementing a smoothie every morning. So I'd have a green smoothie, lots of spinach, dates.
Yeah.
I'd put cilantro in there. It would depend on what I wanted in it. But I never thought about putting a vitamin C in it. I mean, I guess bananas are always in it. It's a staple. But that's not vitamin C. So with me, I have to be careful of vitamin C myself, because vitamin C is acidic in different types of vitamin C. And then that's an issue with psoriasis. So I've always had to be careful of that. Yeah. But you can get vitamin C in vegetables too. So there's vitamin C in many different things. So I'm going to keep that in mind. That's actually something new that I can kind of work with. Yeah. So there you go. So basically, if I'm eating all that iron from the spinach, if I put vitamin C in with it, it will make that become more potent.
Bioavailable. Right. Yeah.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here and say,
Oh no.
I'm gonna say the thing that everybody always says. You have to have a smoothie every morning to get your iron. Like, why don't you just have a big, steak? Because it's easier to eat that and just get it all. And I get that. And but you're getting the iron in a different source, right? I mean, it's so you're getting with a steak, you're getting it from the animal who got it from the plants themselves, probably.
Yeah.
Whereas we're going directly to the source and trying to get it. And yes, you have to have more of it. It's not as easy to consume. I'm not going to put you on the spot and have you explain why people shouldn't be eating meat, because I don't do that myself. And I'm not one to judge people on their dietary decisions. I am, however, always around and here for people that want to know how have done it for 8-9 years and felt good about it, and all the positive aspects that come from eating that way. Right. So I guess I won't ask you that question, but because I kind of answered it, right? I mean, yes, you can get it faster by eating the meat itself, but then there's other things that come along with that. So you got to make that decision, right? I seen some of your pictures with like the food you make and stuff. Do you mostly go whole food, plant-based? Like, that's what I want to get back to. I had a few couple years that were just really rough. And sometimes when that happens, you start to slip, and there's so many fun vegan foods now that taste like non-vegan foods, and you start to go down that road. And I'm just kind of moving myself back into a more whole food, plant-based type of eating. But what does your typical day look like a typical day of eating?
I would say at home, yes, we are primarily just eating whole food, plant-based. And actually, my first daughter, she was actually vegan for the first, I think, 2.5 years of her life. And then she became extremely picky, and we were kind of panicking because she thought she could survive off just fruit. So we introduced some other things into her diet. So both my girls do eat eggs and a little bit of dairy. They're not huge dairy fans. They might have like cream cheese every now and then. Eggs is pretty much their go-to. So, and my second child is like incredibly picky. So like, there's no chance I could have even tried vegan with her. But so we primarily eat whole food, plant-based. And then in probably the last year and a half, have really decided that for me to feel more balanced and I just decided there was really no need to live so strict for me personally, because I didn't have like the health concerns, and I'm not lactose intolerant, and I didn't have those issues with dairy. So now, in probably the last year and a half, if I go out to a restaurant and they don't have a vegan option, I'm happy to order something that might have a bit of dairy in it. Wow. And that's like once or twice a year. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't say I'm a vegan. And for those two reasons, I don't like the term "and," because truly I'm not. But yeah, so at home, that's how we eat. And I guess I kind of I didn't see the point anymore in being so rigid with myself. But of course, it's so situational, because some people like yourself have reactions to certain foods, and they don't have that ability to have that flexibility.
To go back to it. Yeah, I think it'd be very difficult for me to go back to animal products myself personally. So I have 3 children. I have 2 that are a little bit older, and then I have a 15-month-old now. And all 3 of them, I would call them vegetarian. Mm-hmm. So they don't eat meat, but they love their cheeses, they love their dairy. I have one, my first girl she's a bit older now. she's more strict. She doesn't like to have certain things because it bothers her stomach and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, no, that's why I'm saying I'm not like I'm a strict vegan for myself, but I don't
Yeah.
push that agenda on people.
Right.
And my children. It's really about the health that I'm looking at. So, but interesting. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's good. That's really interesting to know that you do every once in a while have a little bit of cheese. I don't know how I would do that because I think it would upset my stomach. There's been a few times where I've had a coffee and they've accidentally put like real milk in. I know right away because my body has become adapted to oat milk or almond milk or whatever it is. And as soon as that other it comes in and it goes, whoa, like, dude, this isn't something your body's used to. So I know right away. I know right away. And,
yeah. And if I had that reaction, I absolutely wouldn't eat it. Right. But I'm fortunate enough to not have any kind of adverse reaction. And so it's not as big of an issue to me anymore. So, but I don't eat it at home. And I honestly would never eat animals again. I just can't. And I don't even think I have the palate for it anymore.
Yeah.
I think it would just truly not taste good.
Yeah. I want to move in that direction a little bit, actually, from a mind and body and soul. When you switched to not eating animals, did you notice any change in yourself? Did you notice that you felt better? Do you think it was just a placebo effect? Did you have any change in your own well-being? And you can say no. You don't have to say yes. You had this transformative experience. I'm just always curious because I personally did notice a big change, but not everybody does. So I was curious about that.
Yeah, when I went vegetarian, I would say I was still in my 20s, and I'm fortunate enough to have had good physical health. So there was no like physical issues that that I was trying to heal at that time.
Right.
I would say that eventually I probably noticed better energy and like I didn't need to, go to the gym as often or
right.
So to say, I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to use the wrong terminology here, but so it just became a little bit easier to stay at what I determined to be a healthy what I determined to be good physical health. It was to me a little bit easier to maintain.
Okay.
And then when I switched to the vegan diet, it was I can't say anything magical at that time because I had a 6-month-old baby and I was completely exhausted from her not sleeping. And, everyone was always like, oh, like, do you have so much energy now? Like, I bet you just like feel amazing. And I'm like, I am exhausted because I was up 10 times last night. So, unfortunately I didn't get to experience that, newfound energy that everyone always claims they get when they do switch to a vegan diet because I was at home with a baby that really sucked at sleeping.
Right. Yeah. I should say too, I just started thinking to myself, my baby, I still call her baby because she's only 15 months. She is actually more plant-based or vegan because when she was born, she was the first child I ever had that had colic. And so we didn't have the option of breastfeeding for different reasons. So we went to formula, and the formula was dairy based, and it didn't matter what we went to. She was screaming all the time. And I don't know if there is a relation to colic and upset stomachs and things like that in babies. I'd have to look more into that, but that was something I felt was part of it because we finally found a lactose-free formula that calmed things down a bit. And then that formula went off the shelves for a recall. And so we went to soy, and it was like everything just slowed down, like the
Oh,
colic.
wow.
Yeah. And no more stomach issues and things like that. So I did say earlier that all three of my kids are vegetarian. My son especially is vegetarian. He likes his pizza pops and pizza pockets and things like that. Um, but I think both my daughters are pretty much plant-based vegan, to be honest. Not even just plant-based, but vegan. Mainly because my youngest can't even handle milk. So
Right.
I don't know why. Is the milk different these days? I don't know, but this is just what happened. And we dealt with this. Colic is a real thing, and it was
Yeah.
incredibly
Wow.
difficult. So I can relate and have
Yeah.
compassion towards. I know you didn't say you had a colicky baby, but just those first 6 months, and on
Mm,
top of it, we had colic, and it felt like 3 months was like 2 years. It was crazy.
wow.
For anyone out there, if you are dealing with a colicky baby, you might want to try a different formula just to see. You never know. It
Yeah.
could save a lot of sleepless nights.
Maybe. Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Usually you're doing your counseling, you're doing your work-based practice there, and people will ask you about nutrition and you'll just kind of give them advice. Is that kind of how that works? If that
No.
comes up?
So no, they'll come in and they'll be very clear about whether they want nutritional guidance
Okay.
and along with their counseling, or if they're just there for counseling or just there for nutrition support.
That's really neat. I mean, I'm a musician, singer-songwriter. I write my albums. I coach and teach music, singing, and all that. And now I'm doing a podcast. So I guess this is a little bit different. Um, but yours is just a neat combination of the two. So that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. I mean, I guess I've done some sound healing with people and use
Oh,
sound and
nice.
music therapy and sound healing. So I've got a certification in that
Oh,
that
nice.
I
I
that
love
I
that.
did. Yeah, and so I've used that around for different purposes and things like that. So that kind of goes along with my music coaching career. I was looking over what you do, and there was something
Yeah.
called memory reconsolidation or memory something.
Yeah.
It popped
Yeah.
out to me, and I was like, what is that? I need to ask
Mm.
what memory reconsolidation is.
So it's not a technique. It
Oh,
is a natural brain mechanism. So it's something that happens in our brains naturally when given the right, I like to say, ingredients. Um, and it's just part of how we basically update our knowledge and update our beliefs about the world, and ultimately then whatever gets coded into our brain determines how we kind of live our life and the way we behave. So researchers basically discovered that we could take the principles of memory reconsolidation and implement them in a counseling or therapeutic setting so that we can actually update old neural pathways that are viewed as problematic. So, for example, so we have something, everyone has emotional knowings that are stored in our subconscious. And these emotional knowings are developed when we're children and we experience different things in our lives. So, say, for example, if a child experienced something traumatic or something really stressful, they may have coded into their subconscious that I'm not safe. And so then they go about the rest of their life with the subconscious belief that they are not safe. And it might be a certain situation that triggers this core belief. And so if we can, in the therapeutic setting, if we can essentially dig down to uncover what was coded in the subconscious mind early in childhood, we can then purposely find a mismatch. So information that basically proves that the core belief that was formed in childhood is no longer true. And we can mismatch the information in a session so that the brain actually overrides the old emotional knowing or old core belief.
Wow.
So then you no longer move about the world with the belief that I'm not safe.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
It almost sounds similar to like hypnosis in a way, replacing um, a thought or a trigger and changing it or kind of manipulating in a way so that you're no longer attached to that trigger.
From
Like,
what I know of hypnosis, yes, hypnosis does use the principles of memory reconsolidation. It's just that in my scenario, there's no need for me to induce people into like a hypnotic state.
right.
We just can have a conversation and trigger it that way.
Wow. That's really cool. I mean, that's really
Yeah,
fascinating just
it's
because
super fascinating.
I think we all, as we get older, um, I think I've said this I've had these conversations with many people where those first 15 years or so, or 17 years of your life before you become an adult, there's so many things that kind of make you who you are. And I think it's important to work on those things during those times. And if you don't work on those things during those times, then you got some work to do and you can still work through it. But clearly that looks like uh, a way to approach changing a behavior or a belief later on from something from childhood, so that we can do so. Meaning, what it sounds like to me is it's not a lost cause. We can help work on someone. We can help work on an issue.
Yeah.
Just because you went through that as a child and you didn't deal with it, well, now you're too bad. But no, we can go in and we can readjust and change things. So that's really cool. I've never heard of it. I kind of had a feeling that's what it was about, kind of similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really neat. That's really neat.
Yeah, it's super cool. And yeah, and I mean, there's so many different ways to trigger it. And the essentially like it's it's the science of the understanding that, our brains are plastic, right? And so we can change. I always say there's two different ways to change the brain, to change neural pathways in your brain.
Right.
One way is to just repeatedly create new habits. So you're essentially say you have a behavior that you're trying to change. Well, this behavior that you're trying to change, those neural pathways are incredibly strong. So what you have to do is come up with a new behavior or something else that you're wanting to do, and do it repeatedly over and over and over again to try and essentially outperform that old neural pathway. That takes a lot of work.
Right.
It's possible, but it takes a lot of work. With memory reconsolidation, it's as soon as we uncover what the core belief is, it automatically overrides that neural pathway. And that neural pathway is it's not there anymore.
And here all along, I've been telling people to replace their bad habits with playing guitar. It's a new healthy habit. So, I mean, to a point, I think that's still good, but it sounds like yours is a little bit quicker. So,
well, it's not, you know what? It can be quick if the person is very attuned to themselves. But if you are someone who is very disconnected from your body, your intuition, and your emotions, it takes us some work, because we're digging up what's in your subconscious mind, right? So it's not in your conscious awareness. And the way we get to the subconscious mind is by working with the body. And so if you're very disconnected with your body, from your body, right, it takes some serious work to get there. So yes, it could be easy and it could be quick, but also it could take some time depending on your current self-attunement.
This is a great segue, actually, because you're talking about, being clear with yourself, knowing yourself. I go into these conversations with everyone because I've been around so many people. It's one of the benefits of working in music in the industry and coaching, and is I've I've worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. Everyone has different belief systems, and I find that really fascinating. And I love talking to people's, I have my own, but I've never been the type to push my beliefs on people. I always like to hear others so that I can get my own perspective on things. If we're talking about, I'm going to talk about your counseling practice a little bit here.
Okay.
How much of your counseling with individuals has to do with really finding yourself, whatever that means? It could be in a religious way, it could be in a non-religious way, it could be a spiritual way, in a way that you find stillness with yourself, all these things. Is there a piece that you speak with, or are you more in the scientific realm of it's just your brain, or do you ever really go deeper than that?
Yeah. One of my go-to prompts for people is to check in with their highest, wisest self, because oftentimes we are looking through the eyes of, for example, when we're triggered, we're looking through the eyes of who we were at the age that we were first triggered.
Right.
So you might be looking through your 5-year-old self eyes. And so when I'm sitting with people and they're telling me about a time that was really upsetting to them or something had happened, we connect with that child part that first experienced that trigger. And then we sit and then we switch over and say, now let's connect with your highest, wisest self and see what they have to offer.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. I was always curious about that, because you don't know who you're working with, because someone might not really understand what that higher self would be, or, but it's probably good to address, to see if they can go there, because I think that makes a big difference. And one thing I've noticed in my life is when I'm having difficulties in any way, there's sometimes where I have to just get still with myself and realize, okay, one thing I always go to, it's very strange, but it's the way that I work in my mind, is I think to myself, when I was first born into this world, it was just me. So I come out, it's just me. Even before I see my mom, it's just me. So we go into this life and we keep going through this life, and we let everything around us affect us in such a terrible way sometimes. And yet I have to go back sometimes and say, hey, it's just me for a minute. Like, just get real with me, whatever that means. It could be your spiritual self. It could be, but it's good to slow down and say, okay, right. Okay. It is just me. I'm going to be okay. That's something I've always done. It's probably the first time I've ever mentioned that. But
love that.
It's a way that I kind of reconnect with myself. Because if I don't do that, it's so easy to just let everything else influence you and take you down whatever path they're going. And it's not worth it. So I really like that you have people's, I was curious if you were the type that would kind of, do you come at it from just the body, or the mind, body, soul, and it sounds like you kind of come at it from all angles. So that's good.
Yeah, I try to.
Yeah. And on saying that, another question I ask everybody, and I don't know your religious beliefs or your spiritual beliefs. We haven't talked about that. This was a different kind of podcast. From your own perspective, what do you believe is the reasoning why we are here and existing in this world?
Yeah. I'm really glad that you gave me this question ahead of time. I've never been asked this before. And
good.
Oh man. I almost was kind of shocked that I've never even really, have I even ever considered that myself? Have I ever really truly had that very question come into my mind? I don't know. I don't think I have. But I got thinking, because I was like, I first went to my work with the people I see, and I thought, what is one kind of commonality that I'm seeing repeatedly? And I'm going to say like 95% of the people that come in just want to know how to love themselves. And so I feel like it made me think. And I just feel like the only answer I could come up with, Joe, was love, and love for others and love for ourselves. And to, I guess, figure out how to do that, right? Because like I said, most people are coming in and they have no clue. Like, how do I love myself? So I don't know. I feel like that is something, but I
Yeah.
wish I had some really cool answer to your question.
No, I actually really love that.
That's what came up.
It can be that simple. It can be that we're here to love, and not just love others, but love ourselves. I think that's maybe why a lot of people don't ask that question, this question I ask everybody, because I'm sure you love yourself, but there are always times in our life where we have to reflect on that and make sure we're good in that area. So it is definitely something we all need to consider. And that's such a simple answer, but it is actually as simple as it can be, that we are here to learn to love. You look at all the things that go on in the world and all the different, things we have to overcome. Mm-hmm. And at the nature of it all in the end, when we as humans feel better about a situation, it's probably always surrounding finding love.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
The end of a war, the end of a depression, or a terrible tragedy. There's a tsunami and what happens? Everybody gets together. That's love. Mm-hmm. It's all love. I'm still so happy I had you come on, and I thought, my voice isn't the greatest tonight, and you're going to be that one person that had me with no voice. But you kind of mentioned a few things, but do you have any final messages for anyone? Any words of wisdom in regards to, and you can, it could be around your practice or just anything that would maybe help people in life that you just want to kind of leave a parting message with?
Just, that there's always hope, right? Because that connects to what we were saying earlier around the fact that, the brain is plastic, and I know lots of people like evidence, and we have evidence to show that there is a way to heal your brain and your body. And so to stay hopeful, because we know we have the research, we have the proof, and we have the techniques to be able to implement to make change. I would that would be my message. And then again, love, just always come back to finding love. And if that is something small in the day, such as, feeling the sun on your face in the morning, and that's as much as you can do in that moment or that day, that's okay. But just starting to find those little bits, little glimmers of love that you can kind of infiltrate into your day. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. When you say the brain is plastic, can you elaborate on that a little bit? You said that a few times.
Yeah, neuroplasticity. So it's just basically a way of saying that it is malleable. It can be changed, right? Okay. Right. So, so basically just the whole concept of memory reconsolidation essentially proves how malleable the brain is, right? Like, you're literally overriding a neural pathway that has existed in your brain since you were a child. And to me, that is so hopeful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I've loved about having you on this podcast is people that will be following this podcast will see that we've got, all kinds of different topics that come up. And you are approaching this in a very interesting perspective, because I can tell you're approaching it from a scientific place while also a higher place. So I appreciate that. I really do.
Thank you.
That's what I mean. And I love to hear different perspectives on things. So where can people find out about you? Like if they're interested to touch base with you or to work with you, or
yeah, so primarily, if you're wanting to follow my content, it would be on Instagram at Marisa Rose Wellness. And then you can, if you want to get in touch in terms of counseling or nutrition support, you can email me at marisarosewellness@gmail.com. And then you can also find the link to my website on my Instagram page. That's great. I also have a YouTube channel.
You do? Oh, well, yes. I need to get that too. I need to link that up. And
yes, so I'll put that in the channel. You can access some free guided meditations, guided visualizations, and they're all backed by science.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I'll put that in the description as well. So for anybody watching, I'll put your link in there in the description. Do you offer services online as well, or is it all in person? Do you do a bit
virtually across Ontario?
Great.
Yeah. And then in person in Clinton, Ontario.
Okay. Perfect. Yes. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on and talking to me. This has been great.
Thank you for having me.
I learned a lot. And
oh, good.
Yeah. And no, I definitely was really happy to reconnect with you. And it's been a really nice conversation. So
awesome. Well, thank you for inviting me on, Joe.